Once upon a time, in the great city of London, amidst the grandeur of the royal palace and the humdrum of overcrowded alleyways, two boys were born on the very same day. Yet, their lives couldn't have been more different. Inside the walls of Westminster Palace, Prince Edward Tudor, the Prince of Wales, arrived to cheers of celebration, destined to lead a life of unimaginable privilege and power. Across the city, in a gloomy, desolate neighborhood, Tom Canty was born into destitution, where survival was the only reward. Their fates, so seemingly fixed, were about to intertwine in a way no one could have ever predicted. Edward Tudor lived in luxury that few could fathom. Every moment of his life, from dawn to dusk, was smothered with wealth and decorum. Silk drapes adorned his canopy bed, gold trimmings highlighted every piece of furniture, and his meals were a medley of flavors fit for kings. He had everything, yet he longed for freedom, a life unbound by the suffocating responsibilities and rigid etiquette of royalty. On the other side of the spectrum, little Tom Canty grappled with the stark realities of poverty. While Edward dined on roasted pheasant, Tom scavenged for breadcrumbs. His days consisted of evading the wrath of his abusive father and dreaming of life beyond the filth-strewn streets he called home. Despite his hardship, Tom had one dream: to catch a glimpse of royalty, to see for himself the splendor of a world so different from his own. One fateful day, these two lives were brought together in the most unexpected way. Tom, with a heart full of curiosity and courage, wandered toward Westminster Palace. From behind the gilded gates, his eyes caught something extraordinary: Prince Edward, the living embodiment of the life he fantasized about. It was not long before Edward noticed the pauper gazing at him. The prince, weary of his own gilded cage, beckoned Tom forward. And if you think that was shocking, hold on, because here's where the real twist begins. As the boys conversed, they couldn't help but notice how eerily similar they looked. An idea began to form, a reckless, tantalizing, and seemingly harmless idea. What if they switched clothes, just for a single day? Edward craved the simple freedom of anonymity, while Tom yearned for even a fleeting taste of extravagance. With a mix of excitement and naivety, they made the swap, oblivious to the domino effect this one choice would unleash. Edward, now clad in Tom's tattered attire, ventured into the slums of London for the first time. At first, he was bewildered by the rawness of it all, the smells, the chaos, the unfiltered reality. But soon enough, he was hit by a wave of experiences that would alter his understanding of the world forever. It wasn't long before the prince learned that being poor was much more than just wearing ragged clothes. While on his journey, Edward came face to face with the brutal societal injustices that governed the lives of commoners. He witnessed families torn apart by the harshness of unjust laws. Imagine this: a child being sentenced to severe punishment for stealing a loaf of bread to feed their starving siblings. All Edward could think was, how could this be? Under my father's rule, is this the world we've created? Slowly but surely, Edward's heart began to soften with a new depth of compassion as he started to see his kingdom not just from the top of the golden throne, but from the ground level where people suffered the most. Meanwhile, Tom, now draped in royal regalia, found himself in an equally foreign world. The grand halls that Edward once despised now overwhelmed Tom. The perpetual bowing, the regal speeches, and the constant glare of expectation weighed down on his unprepared shoulders. But to everyone else, he seemed different. His innate kindness, his humility, melted the icy composure of those who surrounded him. At first, the courtiers were baffled. The prince was suddenly more approachable, more human. Unknown to them, this wasn't Edward at all. This was a boy who'd known hardship, doing his best to simply survive in this alien world of opulence. Tom's struggle was far from over. The tangled web of royal advisors, political scheming, and unrelenting scrutiny began to take its toll. Unlike Edward, he faced obstacles not with authority, but with pure heart. Despite his best efforts, the throne started to feel like a burden, he couldn't bear. And soon, it became crystal clear to Tom. This wasn't his life, nor was he meant to live it. As both boys walked through the chapters of each other's lives, they uncovered truths that had the power to unravel centuries of misunderstanding. Edward, after interacting with his people and living under their harsh circumstances, vowed, even as just a boy, to rewrite his kingdom's rules when he returned. Those who had wronged others with no second thought, he would hold them accountable. And for the helpless, for the poor, he would be their voice. During this journey of switched lives, a deep seed of empathy bloomed in Edward. Meanwhile, Tom, though overwhelmed, managed to leave an impression as he diligently tried to fulfill duties no pauper would dream of taking on. However, destiny intervened before any line was crossed too far. One thing about destiny is, it knows when to step in, and step in, it did. Edward, after many close calls in the streets, fought his way back to the palace gates. When he returned, no one initially believed he was the true prince. After all, how did a boy in pauper's rags claim to be royalty? Now visualize this dramatic face-off. Edward proving his identity with an intricate knowledge of secrets known only to the royal family. And just like that, the truth of the switch was laid bare. Tom, relieved beyond belief, relinquished his hold on the throne with no hesitation. As the two boys exchanged knowing glances in the grand hall, the entire court faded into the background. This wasn't a moment of power or grandeur. This was simply two boys, forever bonded by what they had learned. With unparalleled fairness, Edward ascended the throne when his father passed. Not as the sheltered noble he once was, but as a king who had truly seen life from both sides. His reign was marked by justice, wisdom, and empathy. Tom, though returning to his humble origins, was never forgotten. Edward ensured that Tom would always have a place at court and sought his counsel on matters that involved the struggles of the common folk. In the end, the story of Edward and Tom became more than just an old tale. It became a legacy. The lesson of their switch rippled through the pages of history, reminding generations of the power of empathy and the strength of understanding the struggles of others. Because in the end, don't we all seek a life where those in power truly understand the plight of those they serve? And to this day, their tale inspires. It's a reminder that sometimes, to lead, you must first live. Sometimes, you must step out of your shoes and into someone else's, or someone else must wear yours, even if only for a day. It's a timeless lesson in compassion, a call to bridge the divide of worlds. This was the story of the prince and the pauper. But beyond the story, it's a cry for us all. What would you learn by stepping into someone else's life, even just for a day?